Welcome to Battlefield Firestorm. I'm the Counselor and I'll be your flight controller this evening. Many of you aspiring pilots out there probably didn't get into Battlefield 1 specifically to troll enemy players from above, but if you're here, there's a good chance that, like me, you found it to be far and away the most enjoyable aspect of the game. Whatever the reason you're into it, the flying experience changes drastically depending on what you use to control your vehicle. The first video game I ever played was called Strike Commander, a story-based flight simulator published by a company ironically titled Origin. It ran on DOS and had phenomenal hardware support. Not only could you drown the room in legendary MIDI tunes with your shiny new sound blaster, you could plug a joystick straight into your game port and calibrate in-game for an unrivaled 3D experience. Perhaps this explains why I've got such a strong preference for the humble joystick as my primary control interface when I finally snagged that plane on Fire Fortress. I'd recommend this route to others in a second. Nothing immerses you on quite the same level as flying a rickety wooden biplane by wire, but not without a few caveats. Your basic universal control scheme for Battlefield games on PC is the keyboard and mouse, and the slower speeds associated with Battlefield 1's older aerial vehicles make it even easier to use here than in the past. It doesn't require any additional investment over the game itself, and if you decide it's time to finally bail out, you're already set to go for a stroll without a potentially deadly delay as you get tangled in your joystick cord or hurl your Xbox controller across the room. The best reason to stick with the keyboard and mouse though is, in this humble observer's opinion, accuracy. In the moments before you deploy bombs or as you attack fast-moving aerial targets in a fighter, fine-tuning your aim can be the difference between being taken out by a rear gunner or copping a shell from the assault tank you just carpet bombed. If you have a sniper button on your mouse, quote unquote, this difference is even more pronounced. That's one of the buttons that drastically lowers your DPI settings, giving you a really slow movement of your cursor. Despite the fact that with practice you can become very good on the joystick, I feel obligated to warn you that there are some scenarios where you just won't be able to match the level of control your opponent has with the keyboard on their left hand and the mouse on their right. There is a middle ground here. It's the Xbox controller. These come in wired and wireless configurations and are brilliantly integrated with EA and Origin games, with most functions accessible easily and intuitively by default. The other good news is that the inclusion of an analog stick on these controls makes flying feel like it should. And yes, that means pulling down on the stick means your plane pitches up. You're also equipped to play as a soldier, although why you'd want to against people with a mouse is beyond me. My aim's bad enough as it is. Unfortunately, this jack-of-all-trades option really is a master of none, and you pay pretty handsomely for the privilege. In a console world, this makes obvious sense. It's the mouse and keyboard of Xbox, and everyone's at a similar disadvantage. For my money though, I wish I'd skipped straight to the main course. Joysticks can run anything from $50 on eBay to literally thousands. And the nature of analog sticks and the low durability of digital buttons mean you'll want to avoid second-hand options like the plague. My Logitech 3D Pro cost $65 delivered new and is only now showing signs of wear in specific well-used buttons despite months of hard work. For a good brand's cheapest offer, it has twist stick rudder control. It's designed specifically for right hand on stick players and plugs straight into the USB port. It's a good unit for the price, and if you're not offended by wear and tear on entry-level products, it will serve you well. If you got a bit more room in the budget though, you might want to check out the Sidewinders. The most important features on the joystick are stick-based rudder control, easily accessible buttons on the base for your left or your offhand, and a manual, preferably analog, throttle control, lever, stick, some sort of control. Twist to yaw on the joystick means you have analog control over your third axis of flight. It's not immediately apparent how useful this is given the rudder's use for relatively minor adjustments, but being able to slowly and steadily operate your rudder makes life infinitely easier for your gunners, both ground and air oriented. The on-off nature of keyboard rudder control leaves you with really jerky and often unpredictable movements. No matter how good you are as a pilot, this inevitably makes life just that little bit harder for any of your passengers, and it's hard enough getting decent gunners to stick around. The base buttons, on the other hand, are more about convenience for the pilot. I've mapped features like minimap size, voice chat and self-repair to these buttons, but really do whatever works for you. But I no longer need access to the keyboard except to bail out of the plane. But finally, the throttle control. It's far less important than it was in earlier Battlefield titles. Battlefield 1 seems to have only 3 levels of throttle, and these roughly accord with your throttle lever's position. Full throttle, half or a reduced throttle, and idle. Idle appears to provide little to no thrust, but the planes make a very distinctive putt-putt noise from the engine in this mode. So not only will your enemy know you've hit the brakes and respond in kind, they'll be able to effectively track your movements even when they lose line of sight. With a keyboard, you can double tap S or your throttle down key to shut off the engine entirely. Again, sound is crucial here, and the sudden lack of engine tone will inform nearby pilots of your intentions, but with this method you're no longer emitting a virtual sonar ping, meaning if you can shake your tail, you're far likelier to successfully escape. This is one advantage I haven't yet figured out how to implement on the joystick without losing another critical feature. There's always room to learn. That's it for part 2. Stay tuned for part 3, Loadouts and Bombing Techniques, which examines the link between piloting styles and bomber options, showing you the best ways to utilize these specifically tailored packages. I'm the Counsellor. Thanks for watching Battlefield Firestorm.